Hey, what's up? There's a serious lack of PoE2 news or showcases or anything. GGG released a 9-second clip of a mercenary shooting a little grenade and then a laser beam. Looked cool, but it was like, come on, dudes, like, give us something, you know? So anyway, if you're kind of like me and you're just like itching for some more PoE2 content and stuff, I'm really interested in the monk. Some of you might know that, and I really want to play around with different variants of it. So anyway, there's a lot of footage that's available that we've seen so far, so you can come up with a concept of skill interactions. It's not a build guide for all of you people, you know, on Reddit who don't like fun and hate everything. It's not a build guide, it's just theorizing about skill interactions. Okay, so let's go through some of these skill interactions and possibilities. The first one is one that I'm kind of thinking about it like you're fanning the flames almost. And so it's about causing lots of explosions and igniting lots of things, but also using lightning and charge staff and really empowering your attacks a lot so that regular mob clearing attacks are really powerful. That's kind of what I'm going for with this one. So let's take a look, all right? And if you're wondering, this website is PoE2skills.com. It has 9 slots, but it doesn't have slots for regular attacks on weapons. And you can slot in like anything, it seems like, so it doesn't have in there what will not work, okay? So if something doesn't work, we'll find out when the game comes out. It's not a big deal. This is just for fun. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is gas arrow. So on swap, this would be a monk build that uses a quarterstaff, but on swap, I'd have a bow. And so gas arrow rains down an arrow from above, creating a flammable cloud, and it explodes when you add fire to it. So I thought that was cool, and there's a couple supports you could throw in there. Faster projectiles and multiple projectiles. Shoot in like, you'll have like 3 clouds just immediately disperse on a mob. And then what you could do after that is a few things. One could be Infernal Cry, and we've seen that in the warrior footage. Okay, Infernal Cry is a war cry, strength based, and it taunts enemies closer to so that they're coming towards you, and then it kind of like highlights them, and when you kill them, they explode. It says empowered attacks gain 25% of damage as fire damage. So here's a fire penetration support that I just tossed on there for now. So you could, you know, drop the gas arrow, Infernal Cry to empower your next attack, highlight the enemies and get them primed for like this explosion. And then what I have up here is Wind Blast, which is the one where he is like swiping back and forth. And you can knock back enemies with this, and it builds stun. And so I was thinking like you could do added fire damage so that it puts fire on the attack. And then you could do ignition for increased chance to ignite enemies. Inevitable critical and mana flare. So this could be an issue, like you could be running out of mana a lot if this mana flare goes off. We don't really know how this works. I haven't really seen this in action from what I can tell, but it does fire damage on crit, and it uses mana to do the fire damage. So I was thinking like the Wind Blast is the fanning the flames part. So like if it has all this fire damage and ignite possibility with being empowered by Infernal Cry, I was thinking that you'd have this explosive thing happening with the gas arrows and Infernal Cry, and then the Wind Blast like knocking things back. And then once they're ready to be called, you could just use Killing Palm, you know? Killing Palm would then have some fire too. So Fiery Death, killing blows from supported skills against ignited enemies have 60% chance to cause the enemy to explode. So then there'd just be another explosion once their enemies are cullable, and you can cull them with Killing Palm. And then I had Ignite Proliferation so that the ignites would spread from the explosion. And then I put Behead because this allows you to steal modifiers from rare monsters. I just thought that was kind of cool. We haven't seen that yet either from what I can tell. I don't know if it's been used in any showcases yet, but it's on the website, so it must have been publicly shown somewhere. And then there's faster attacks. Probably not necessary on Killing Palm, but I thought maybe it would be cool to put this on there, just not as much wind up, you know, and you just boom, right in there. So now some of the other things too. And remember, Killing Palm gives you a power charge, so, you know, Falling Thunder's down here, of course, because Falling Thunder seems awesome, just like in all cases. So, you know, I put Lightning Penetration, Elemental Focus, so that you can't shock enemies with Falling Thunder anymore, but you can do more damage with the lightning aspect of it. And then there's just added lightning damage. This could be a lot of other things too. You know, this could be like Inevitable Critical, or it could be the Hourglass one where it changes it to a cooldown but does more damage. Like, I just threw this on there for now, you know, but this probably could go on something else. But anyway, so Falling Thunder though, the point is you'll have power charges, so you might as well use Falling Thunder. In addition to that, Profane Ritual I think is going to make its way onto like all my freaking monk builds that I've been looking at now. Basically gives you a power charge from a corpse. So you could support this with Corpse Conservation and Spell Echo. That way, if Corpse Conservation works, my thinking is the Profane Ritual spell will cast twice with Spell Echo and give you 2 power charges from 1 corpse. The corpse is consumed, and Corpse Conservation says supports skills that consume corpses. So it should work. So anyway, you get the idea here. It's Gas Clouds, Infernal Cry, Fanning the Flames, and then, so that's like to start, right? And then all these explosions happen. And so then you have power charges from Profane Ritual from the bodies and from Killing Palm. So you can either hit Falling Thunder now and smack down something, or you could do Charge Staff. And Charge Staff consumes all power charges to empower your staff with lightning and damage and shockwaves. And so I was thinking, okay, support that with more duration. That would be nice. That'll make it last longer. Empowered damage. So skills empowered by supported skills deal 20% more damage. So this would make Charge Staff do more damage for your other attacks. And then Perpetual Charge gives you a chance to not consume the charges. And it says for Charge Staff that you can grant additional buffs by reusing the skill before the duration ends. So I thought that would be pretty cool. So you could get, so imagine getting 3 power charges, like you Killing Palm, you use Profane Ritual, you get, say, the Corpse Conservation and Spell Echo happen. So then like within 2 abilities, you've got 3 power charges, and then say Perpetual Charge goes off with Charge Staff. So then boom, Charge Staff, boom, Charge Staff. Now you're primed to fly in there with Whirling Assault. All right. So Whirling Assault, I have Stormfire, supports any skill that hits enemies, prolonging shocks they inflict on ignited enemies. So, you know, everybody's ignited already, and now you're whirling in with all this Charge Staff lightning damage on the Whirling Staff. And then I put Shock Chance for increased shock chance. I put Close Combat. I'm not really sure if this would be good with this or not, but it says that you do more damage the closer you are. And then Shock Proliferation, that it basically has a 50% chance to shock enemies in a 2.5 meter radius. So, and enemies that are shocked take more damage. So you can kind of see like the gameplay loop is such that, you know, you have multiple options of how you want to go about the next thing. It's either, do we keep igniting, or do we start shocking off of our ignites now? And I feel like there's going to be a lot of like movement happening with the Wind Blast thing, and the Whirling Assault, you know. I think there'll be a lot of movement there. That'll be pretty cool. The Infernal Cry will be taunting enemies into the gas arrows, grouping them up. And now here's one more thing about this with Infernal Cry. So it says that Infernal Cry gets buffs from endurance charges, right? So how would you get endurance charges on the monk, right? Well, you could get them from supports like this, gain an endurance charge when supported skills fully break an armor. Or you could get it from this, gain an endurance charge when you stun an enemy with a melee hit. Okay, I found a way where you could get 2 endurance charges for the price of 1, basically, on Staggering Palm. You dash to an enemy and strike them with an unarmed attack. Heavy stunning an enemy grants you a buff that causes your quarterstaff and unarmed attacks to also fire projectiles. So imagine that, first of all, too, on Wind Blast and Whirling Assault. The projectiles shooting out everywhere, empowered by charged staff, and igniting things, right? At the same time as projectiles shooting out. That just sounds cool. And so anyway, let's imagine that the yellow mark goes over the enemy. You fly in with Staggering Palm and heavy stun them. Okay, so here's Devastate. Supported skills fully break armor when inflicting a heavy stun. Okay, so if the heavy stun goes off, boom, you break all their armor, right? What happens when you break their armor? Armor explosion. So converts 100% of physical damage to fire damage. So boom, an explosion happens and you cause all this fire damage. So it's on the theme here. We got ignites happening again. You would gain an endurance charge when you break the armor. And you would get an endurance charge from the heavy stun effect. So breaking armor and stunning from Staggering Palm with these 4 supports would give you 2 endurance charges in one go, which then can buff Infernal Cry. Empowers the next melee attack you perform, plus an additional attack per endurance charge consumed. So the endurance charges basically are allowing additional attacks to be empowered. So that's pretty sweet. All right, and so let's just go over it one more time. Everything at once here. Staggering Palm, Wind Blast, Kindling Palm, Whirling Assault, Profane Ritual, Charge Staff, Infernal Cry, Gas Arrow, Falling Thunder. The loop is like, here's multiple gas arrows, wind blasts to fan the flames, so to speak, cause these ignites and explosions to go off. Killing Palm, get a power charge. Profane Ritual, get a couple power charges. Charge Staff, twice potentially. Whirling Assault now goes in and starts shocking all the ignited enemies. If they can be heavy stunned, you could do Staggering Palm, get endurance charges, use Infernal Cry, taunt them all back again. And then, that would be kind of like the gameplay loop for like mob clearing and stuff. And then, and I think having all this extra fire and lightning damage on just your basic attacks and stuff, I think that would be pretty good against bosses too, but I don't really know. But then if it's, if you need heavier hitters, then you have Falling Thunder to fall back on with the power charges. So here's the other one now. This one has actually this one has like kind of everything. So it has fire and lightning and physical and poison and armor break and even some summons. In Diablo 2, I love the wolf summons, and I loved making melee builds using wolves somehow in that game. So anyway, there are some summon wolf on here as well that I think I would just like to play around with. I don't know how good it would be on this build, but I'm excited to try it. Hopefully Druid is available in early access. Okay, so for this one, the idea behind this one is trying to use the overkill potential of Herald of Ash, which is a buff gem, which costs 30 spirit to equip. And so basically it says, burn surrounding enemies if overkill damage is at least 20% of enemy's maximum life. And then it says buff causes attacks to gain 15% of damage as extra fire damage. Base burning damage is 30.5% of overkill damage. Burn surrounding enemies if overkill damage is at least 20% of enemy's maximum life. Buff causes attacks to gain 15% of damage as extra fire damage. So basically it's just like, if you are overkilling, like you're doing too much damage to the enemy, it kills them, there's an overflow that will transform into like fire damage and burning damage, is what I understand. So I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool, because watching the footage of the monk, you see that there's lots of overkill, it seems like, with Falling Thunder. Here's some supports. Elemental Focus, so you can't inflict shock anymore, but it does more lightning damage. Here's Lightning Penetration, so that's more lightning damage essentially. Inevitable Critical, Exploit Weakness. So this is cool because it says supported skills consume enemy fully broken armor to deal 50% more damage. I thought that was kind of interesting, and I have a setup on Siphoning Strike to maybe get that going. And then I have Hourglass. This gives it a cooldown and 35% more damage though. So this maybe this won't be desirable with the cooldown, but maybe it'll be really good. Not sure, but basically the point is that each one of these things is increasing the damage of Falling Thunder, so we can maximize the overkill damage for Herald of Ash. And so then for the supports for Herald of Ash, Eternal Flame, Ignite duration is increased by 100%, but they have a 25% less chance to ignite. Now this one, it seems like the Herald of Ash burn happens no matter what, but I'm not sure. If it happens no matter what, then that means the detriment of this support is basically not going to affect this at all. So something I'm just curious about. And then Fire Penetration, you know, for more fire damage. Ignite Proliferation, so the ignites spread. Frostfire, I do have some like a frost move on the bottom. It says 100% more effect to ignite against frozen enemies, and it consumes the freeze. And then Searing Flame, causing inflicted ignites to deal more damage, but its hits to deal less damage. So that's another one too, where I'm not exactly sure how the interaction will affect Herald of Ash, but I like the idea of the burn damage, like over time being stronger. So put that on there. So then there's Killing Palm, right? So you can get power charges, Behead for stealing modifiers, Soul Drain, and Life Drain, so that you can get life and mana back for culling. Fiery Death, once again, I just like that. You kill them, you call them, and then they have a 60% chance to explode against ignited enemies. The explosion only happens if they're already ignited. Enduring Mana as well. Enemies killed by hits from supported skills grant 25% more Mana Flask charges. I feel like that might be a good way to just deal with mana problems, you know? Alright, so that's like the first chunk there, where you're going to be doing like lots of burn damage from your overkill damage from like Falling Thunder, getting power charges and some Mana Flask charges back from Killing Palm. Tempest Flurry. This is just a great move for pack clearing and shocking enemies. Check this out. It's the one that you like he swings it around a couple times, and there's a third hit where he flips forward, and there's like a lightning thing that comes down and does AoE. So shock chance, increased chance of shock. You could have shock proliferation, so it spreads. You could have extended combo, so you do that second, so you do that last powerful move twice in a row. That might be really sweet. Enervation for mana regen when on shocked enemies, and then there's lasting shock, so that the shocks last longer. And so you want to get that going because Siphoning Strike benefits from shocked enemies. So you can get a power charge by hitting people with the back of your quarterstaff. It's like a dash forward, or will release a shockwave and give you a power charge. So that's why you'd want some of this shocking ability from Tempest Flurry. You could do, and so the way that I've supported this as well is try to get armor break to happen so that Falling Thunder would get 50% more damage for the overkill. Okay, so basically, poison chance, 60% chance to poison on hit. Corrosion breaks armor equal to 3,500% of poison damage dealt. And then break endurance, so gain an endurance charge when supports fully break an enemy armor. And that would actually help with Infernal Cry, which we went over in the last one. And then Minion Pact. So I mentioned the wolves in the beginning. Minion Pact. Supported skills remove 20% of your maximum life from a nearby minion to use to deal 20% more damage. Okay, so that would just kind of boost the damage a bit of Siphoning Strike. And then Bursting Plague. I don't know what this will do. I'm just interested in the interaction. It's just kind of like something as a reminder for myself. I want to see what happens when you put something like Poison Chance on like an attack and then have Bursting Plague. It says poison from supported skills also adds 200% of damage per second to enemy as plague, up to a maximum of 30% of enemy's maximum life. And so it says poisoned enemies gain plague over time and explode in a plague burst on death. So not sure exactly how all of that interaction will work with corrosion, with poison chance, and all that stuff. You know, I'm not really sure, but I'm just interested to try it out and see if you could like break some armor and have some poison spread and maybe break armor on the next guy easier or something. I'm not sure. We'll see. So Infernal Cry. On this time, I put empowered damage on Infernal Cry because it empowers the next attack. And if you have endurance charges, it'll empower multiple attacks. So this is 20% more damage for Infernal Cry on your next attack when it's used. So you could use Infernal Cry with empowered damage to boost your physical damage for Siphoning Strike, and then have Minion Pact to boost the damage of Siphoning Strike, and then Wolves, when summoned, make critical hits more likely, so that'll also boost the damage of Siphoning Strike, which is kind of how the poison is calculated. So that's kind of my thinking there. Also, if they're shocked already, they take more damage, so that could increase the damage, essentially, of poison, I think, if they're shocked already. And so, once again, Profane Ritual with Corpse Conservation and Spell Echo for 2 free power charges, potentially, on a corpse. And then at the bottom here, I have Summon Wolf and Wave of Frost. So Summon Wolf, you know, they increase your crit chance once they're summoned. I'm really interested to see how these operate as, like, kind of permanent minions that'll just keep attacking things, too. Feeding Frenzy. Minions from supported skills are aggressive. I'm not exactly sure what aggressive does. I think it means they'll just, like, go after enemies at a bigger range. That's kind of what I think is, like, when an enemy hits their radius, they'll go after them sooner or something like that. Last Gasp. There's not a lot of minion supports right now on the website, so it's kind of hard to pick supports for this because you're not sure what will exactly interact with it yet. But this is a minion support. Minions from supported skills die 4 seconds after their life is reduced to 0. And then there's Essence Harvest, so you get 50 mana when a minion dies. So that seems kind of nice. And then there's Minion Instability. So this explodes minions when they're on low life. I'm curious about this with the interaction of Last Gasp. Okay, so it says dealing 7% of their life as fire damage to surrounding enemies. So they'll explode when reduced to low life. But what happens if you have this on and it says minions from supported skills die 4 seconds after their life is reduced to 0? Does that mean they could explode and not die? And then, because this is supposed to happen when they're reduced to low life, right? Or does this just negate Last Gasp? Those are a couple interactions that I would be curious to try. Would it somehow happen twice? I don't think so, but that's just an interesting interaction. So maybe you'd have to take one of these away in order for the other to work. And then the last thing I put on here, which I don't think this would work on a minion, but I'm not sure. I put added cold damage, just so they could chill enemies, kind of like the Spirit Wolves in Diablo 2. But anyway, I don't think added cold damage will actually apply to a minion, but I could be wrong, and it could work. And if that's the case, then you could have wolves that do some cold damage for you and kind of like slow and chill enemies, which I think might be kind of cool as well. Okay, and then the last thing is Wave of Frost. Flip backwards while sending a freezing wave of ice to damage an area in front of you. So hits freeze as though dealing 350% more damage, so higher chance to freeze. So I put Glaciation. Supported skills cause 30% more freeze buildup against chilled enemies, and if my added cold damage works on the wolf, and they can chill enemies from their cold damage, then this support here, Glaciation, it'll actually work then. And then Deep Freeze. Supported skills have 30% increased freeze duration. Cold Penetration, so supported skills penetrate 20% cold resistance, so there's a little more damage on that. And then Frost Nexus, supported skills create chilled ground for 4 seconds when they freeze an enemy. Since this has a high freeze capability, I thought, just like, why not throw that on there for the chilled ground, which then allows Glaciation to kind of work better too. And remember, the reason I have this on here in the first place is because of Frostfire support that's up on Herald of Ash. So the Frostfire support says supported skills have 100% more effect of Ignite against frozen enemies. All right, so that's kind of where I put that on there. This is once again, the idea here is utilizing the overkill potential of Herald of Ash with Falling Thunder, empowering that with shocking enemies because they'll take more damage from shock, empowering that with Infernal Cry, empowering that with Breaking Armor, And so there's multiple ways to increase the burn effect or the overkill effect. One would be to break armor with Siphoning Strike. Another would be to freeze them, you know, and have Herald of Ashes burn do better then. And so that's kind of how I'm theorizing about this one. And I wonder, and I think the gameplay loop of this could be fun as well, because you also have Tempest Flurry and Siphoning Strike, which are both really fast, you know, so you're like, boom, 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 so pow, pow, and then you're like dashing in with Siphoning Strike, Infernal Cry, Taunt, and then you like Falling Thunder, or like the wolves get in there, and then you like Wave of Frost backwards, you know, and freeze them all, kill one of them, and Herald of Ash goes off, and all the burn happens. And then, you know, you could use Profane Ritual at the end and get your power charges back. And then the next mob comes, bam, Falling Thunder, just does massive damage. And then Herald of Ash is triggered again, and it does all this overkill burn damage and everything. Anyway, that's kind of, those are the two specs that I was kind of looking at, you know, to try to get some fire damage going on a monk and what that would be like. It's not a pure fire damage build, right? That's not what it is, but it is like utilizing it a lot. And I think since the monk doesn't have fire on quarterstaff attacks, it's kind of cool to like incorporate fire on the build.